Well, it looks like we have a fairly split audience. We've got the same number of teachers, curriculum folks, and STEM folks, but we know that we can focus on the actual platform and the content, not so much on the technology. So appreciate you answering that very much. And I guess we'll officially get started. My name is Glenn Collins, and I'm with Veative Canada. And I'm going to flip it over to Mark from Diversified to tell you a little bit about Diversified before we get too far into the platform.
Thanks so much, Glenn. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. As Glenn mentioned, we know we all are juggling a lot these days, and we appreciate you giving us a few minutes out of your day to learn about our Veative VR platform, which we're really excited about. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark McPherson, and I'm privileged to lead the Canadian division of Diversified. Working with an amazing team, a couple of whom are here with me today. I've got Will Sharp and Mary Jane Harper, who have joined us as well. And some of you may know us and remember us as the company called Advanced. We've been around for over 20 years in the EdTech space. And in case you didn't know, we were acquired by a large technology company called Diversified about a year and a half ago. So we're now part of a much larger global solutions provider with many different AV and IT specialties, one of which continues to be K-12, which is near and dear to our heart. So we're excited to continue our partnerships working with many of you as part of a larger company with more solutions to offer, like Veative. To that end, I think over the last year, I know we've continued to support a few of you on this call, just with your projector upgrades and interactive flat panel installations. And I think a few of you we've worked with on your smart software, content renewals, and professional development plans. And I got to tell you, if you had told me a year ago or 2 years ago that we would have been providing UV tech cleaning devices and air purifiers and really affordable voice tracking camera solutions for schools, yeah, I wouldn't have believed you, but here we are. And so let's get into our topic today, because it does really fit in really well with all of this. And I'm sure like you, I'm sure like me, you're all tired of hearing these words, hybrid classroom and remote learning. Well, we partnered with Veative a few years ago now, because we wanted to really help educators deliver STEM content in a different kind of way. And it wasn't about VR goggles being kind of the latest cool trend in ed tech. It was about there being real tangible value in being able to present complex curriculum in what we thought was an innovative and more effective way. And COVID has really driven this need even further, I think. And I'm really excited to show you today how the Veative platform can help address this need. And I think they've created a really great platform. It's really evolved a lot over the last year or so to help educators and learners alike. So I hope you get a lot out of the session. Hope you enjoy it. And on that note, Glenn, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, thanks, Mark. So again, my name is Glenn Collins. I'm Business Development Manager for Veative in Canada. Mary, who's going to do the heavy lifting today, is with us all the way from Florida. And she's part of our global products team. And I'll let her give you her background, but she spent a bunch of time in the classroom and can draw on that to kind of help you in terms of how you might utilize the platform, especially in the environment we are in today. And we've been talking to organizations about Veative and the role it plays throughout the pandemic and how it's helped in both, in-class, hybrid, and distance learning environments, and how flexible it is to be able to utilize in those three areas. And we're going to spend some time talking about that today. We typically get into a bit of a conversation about the challenges people are faced in times of distance learning. And certainly one of the challenges that anybody that's teaching science or math or any STEM related product is the experiential learning goes away. There's no way to share anything, whether it's a lab, whether it's doing experiments in a lab. It really is hard to have that in real time right now. So we're seeing a big use of the simulations, the lab simulations that you'll see today, And to still have that experiential learning, it's just in a virtual space as opposed to being in a chemistry lab or a lab of some kind. So we're seeing a few challenges that we're able to address in a distance learning environment. One of them is the simulations, the labs. The other one obviously is the interactivity of the modules that you'll see where they actually get to interact with the virtual environment. So much like they would in a lab, they actually get to touch, mix chemicals, do those kind of things. So they get to fail, but nothing starts on fire, which is kind of a nice outcome. So we've seen a lot of people really struggling this year with, with content that's designed for distance learning. And it was a bit of a coincidence. Prior to COVID, Veative had been working with UNICEF in a number of countries to be able to deliver what once was only available using VR headsets in a much less expensive environment. And they were in the middle of porting everything over to a platform called WebXR, which is like a video game platform. So it's still 360 degrees. It's still experiential. You still interact like you would in a video game. Only now you can do it on a Chromebook. You could do it on a notebook. You can virtually do it on any device that has a keyboard, a mouse, and or a trackpad, as long as you have internet connection. So it becomes it allowed a lot more people to have access to that platform, as opposed to waiting for people to be able to share headsets again. And hopefully that'll come sooner rather than later. And it really does come back to that experiential learning piece that so many students, we take for granted for years, that you'd be able to go to a classroom and experience something tactile that will allow you to absorb the content better. And that's one of the things that many studies have shown about virtual reality, is that the learning outcomes are substantially increased because of that experiential ability and the way that you operate in the real world versus watching a video or reading a textbook. So it does allow the students to be much more interactive. The other challenge that we've seen in Ontario, I know for sure most of the exams are canceled. So the teachers are struggling somewhat to know what the students are learning, what the learning loss is all about. How do you actually give somebody a grade when you don't have any way of monitoring their progress? So the nice thing about Veative is it really does touch on all the key concepts in the curriculum between grade 6 and grade 12 in math, biology, chemistry, and physics. And every module, and Mary will show you this, has three major components. It has a learning objective, so the student and the teacher know what the outcomes are supposed to be. It has an interactive portion where the students go in, they learn about the concept, they interact with an interactive reality environment, if you were a virtual environment, I'm sorry, and they learn the subjects. And at the end of that, they perform a formative assessment, which allows the teacher to look at what elements of the concepts did they get or didn't they get, and what do I have to do to go back and make sure they understand all aspects of it. So it helped with another challenge that people were having as a result of distance learning. And again, I talked a little bit about labs. I won't spend too much time on this because Mary will actually show you this in action, but it does allow you to either lead it as a teacher, lead a lab, have kids do it or have students do it collaboratively, or have it done in a self-study environment. But the program is really made up of, or the platform is really made up of three elements. The first one is the element that is the teacher controls to create the classrooms, to add the content, to manage the students and make sure that they have the right content aligned with the right grades and subjects. And then obviously the platform itself, which is shown here, that allows the students to go in and do the things we just described. And then of course, there's the data analytics that says, how are my students doing? Where do I need to help them? How can I reinforce some of the concepts that maybe a bunch of them didn't get? And again, it looks very much like Google Classroom, so it's very intuitive. The learning process is really short for teachers typically. You can look at the data from an administrative standpoint, the entire organization. You can look at it from a teacher's perspective. How's my class doing? I can look at it from an independent student's perspective. And there is a view for a parent to go in and see how their child is doing as well. So provincially aligned, more than 550 modules as I described them. They work on Chromebooks, laptops, MacBooks, iPads if they have a keyboard and a trackpad. 550 labs with experiential learning, grade 6 to grade 12. And as I said earlier, biology, chemistry, physics, and math. There are a bunch of tours of historical landmarks where students could go in and learn about the Eiffel Tower or a number of others as part of the platform, along with more than 500 and I think it's just over 500 curated 360-degree videos. So diving with sharks, things that will add to the content of your class are very easy to find. You could take a quick view of what they are. And even in those environments, using my keyboard, I can move around 360 degrees, up, down, look in every direction like I could with a VR headset. I'll leave that information with Mary. I think the one thing that I always like to stress when I'm talking to educators, these modules are 10 to 20 minutes in length. They're not meant to replace a lesson. They're meant to enhance a lesson. And they can be used either to introduce a concept, to drive further understanding of that concept, to go back and review something that you'd covered previously, or to help students who really need help with this particular concept or aspect of their curriculum. And these are some of the things that we think or we're seeing it replace in terms of other teaching tools. So because I have this virtual world with this content, with the ability to understand how the students are doing, even potentially work with them collaboratively, it removes the field trip. It removes, what we used to do, rolling the video into the classroom and showing the video, etc. I think you'll get a pretty good idea of all of that when Mary, who I will now turn this screen over to, shows you the actual platform. By all means, I am looking at the Q&A. Please feel free to jump in and ask lots of questions. We're more than happy to answer anything that comes up right away. And anything that we can't get an answer to, we'll make sure we'll get back to you in writing within 24 hours. But ask lots of questions. That's what we're here for. All right, Mary. I will stop sharing. I think you should have control now, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Glenn. My name is Mary Carson. I was a secondary science teacher in public education for 14 years, and now I'm part of Veative's global product team. So I'm just going to share with you a few examples of Veative content and some integration strategies that can be used both with VR from a headset and also with WebXR from a computer. And then I will take you live into our learning management platform so you can kind of see some of the features that we built in that platform to address the needs of educators. Immersive learning experiences can be really helpful when teaching abstract concepts or processes that you can't directly observe. This is one of Veative's virtual biology labs on influenza, where students can examine and they can dissect and they can learn all about the structure of this virus. And labs like these can allow students to each examine their own individual organism or their own individual specimen, where sometimes that's difficult with a live lab, due to cost of materials or time constraints or safety concerns, or especially today because of distance learning and a lot of concerns over sanitization with students sharing materials and students sharing workspaces. Application is a really important part of virtual labs and experiences, and it's another place where immersive learning really excels. This is a Veative math module on the Pythagorean theorem. So students learn all about this topic, and then they are transported to this virtual environment where they can apply what they learned. So here students have leaned this ladder up against this building in order to get to a window, and they're trying to figure out the height of that window from the ground using the math skills that they were just taught. Immersive learning can provide students with opportunities that would otherwise be impossible. This is one of the Veative physics modules on wind speed and air pressure. So in the first part of this module, which you see on the left, students are in a laboratory setting and they're doing different activities to explore how wind speed and air pressure are related to each other. So here they're using a hair dryer to blow air between those two suspended balloons, and they learn why that actually causes the balloons to move closer together. And then in the second part of this module, they're taken outside into this virtual hurricane so they can see how those concepts they just learned about in the science lab actually impact the world around them. So there are really high winds blowing over the surface of the roof of that house, which was causing a decrease in air pressure. So there was a relatively higher air pressure inside, which was kind of pushing up on the roof, and part of the roof of that house actually blew off. This is one of the Veative modules on Earth's magnetic field, where students can learn how charged particles from the sun cause us to see the aurora borealis on Earth. So again, real world experiences are something incorporated really heavily into our virtual labs and our virtual simulations, and they're a really important aspect of the student experience. And you can also kind of see how these types of immersive experiences would be really impactful in full virtual reality, whether you're floating in outer space or you're standing in the snow experiencing the aurora borealis, or you're immersed in a hurricane. They can really help students make those connections to concepts, and sometimes even take them to places they can't actually visit in the real world. You can also use WebXR modules to demonstrate concepts to your students. So as a teacher, I can launch one of these modules on my computer and I can project it to my class. I can either do this in person or I can do it remotely just by sharing my screen. And then students can participate by guiding me through the demonstration. So this is one of our labs on density of fluids. There are different types of liquids that we can put into that large beaker. And then there are balloons filled with different substances that we can drop in. So we can find out what happens when we drop those balloons into the beaker. Do the balloons float, or do they sink, or are they kind of suspended in the middle? And that can tell us a little bit about the density of those fluids in relation to each other. So students can kind of guide me through this. I can ask them, to choose a liquid, to select a balloon, ask them what they think will happen when we drop the balloon in, do it, see what actually happens. And as we go through this process, over to the right, you can kind of see there's a data table that gets filled out along the way. So we have that data to look at later if we want. So you can use this type of content to perform virtual demonstrations, but you can also have your students lead demonstrations virtually. So this was a virtual class that was being taught on Zoom, and the students were actually sharing their screen with the rest of their class, and they were using that annotate feature in Zoom to kind of draw on the screen and explain this concept to their classmates. This is one of our modules on how to balance chemical equations. And in this part that you're seeing, you're at a fair and you're throwing these different darts at these balloons to pop those balloons in order to have the same number of magnesium and oxygen atoms on both sides of the equation, so you can balance that equation. And then collaboration is also something that can be sometimes a bit challenging, especially during distance learning or if you're online learning. This is one of our modules on simple machines. And when you start out, you're at the center of this spiral maze. And as you work your way out, you run into these different obstacles along the way that can be overcome by using different types of simple machines. So you can have your students work together in groups to try to figure out which types of simple machines strategies to use and why they're effective at overcoming each obstacle. And then ultimately, they'll be able to work together to escape that maze. So you can really see how the gamification in these modules really helps engage students in the learning process. So being able to offer meaningful experiences and virtual labs and having that student-led piece and having that collaboration piece, which is sometimes difficult to achieve, is really powerful, especially now with a lot of schools facing unexpected shutdowns and kind of transitioning to distance learning. So I'm going to take you now into our learning management platform. It's all web-based, so it's just a website that you load on your computer and you log into your teacher account. Students have accounts also that they log into to access the content. We have single sign-on with Google, so if you use Google, that's an option for you. I'm going to log in as a teacher. And you'll see the first thing when I log in as a teacher is my classes. So this looks very similar to Google Classroom. If you're a Google Classroom user, it should be pretty intuitive. But ease of use is really something that we really thought about with the design of this platform. When you set up your classes, for example, at the very beginning of the school year, when you're creating your new classes, you just click on a button that says Create Class. So you give your class a title and you save that, and that's just one step for creating a class. So I have some classes here that are already set up. I'm going to go into my physics class and show you what that looks like from within a class. So from within a class, I have 4 different tabs across the top. I have all of my content, and then I have my students, I have my VR lab, and my reports. So the student tab just lets me manage the students in my class. I can add students in a variety of different ways. We do integrate with Google Classroom. So if you're a Google Classroom user, when you're first onboarding your students, you can import a roster directly from Google Classroom to get your students in the system that way. I can change passwords if I forget, or if a student forgets a password, I can add them, I can remove them. So just kind of managing the students. With my content tab, I can assign assignments and assign pieces of content to my students for them to complete. So I'm going to click on this select content button right here. And there's quite a bit of content. We have over 550 different pieces of immersive interactive content. These are the Veative modules that you can explore. We also have a curated list of 360 videos to choose from as well. There's a search feature if you're looking for something specific, and then you can also filter this content down by course and subject. So this will be aligned to your curriculum. So for example, if you're on the Ontario curriculum, you can filter the content by course and by subject based on that curriculum. So I'm going to filter my content down a little bit by subject area. So I'm going to click on my physics modules, and then I'll filter that down a bit further. I'm going to look at the category of energy within physics. And here's all of my Veative modules within that category. So there's quite a few modules here. So if I see something that looks interesting, say I want to learn about convection, I'm going to click on this info icon to learn more about this module. So when you're planning your lesson, when you're trying to decide if this is a piece of content that your students may benefit from, you can use this tool right here. So in the middle of the screen, it shows you a short preview video of what that module looks like. And then over on the right-hand side, you have an overview, you have your learning objectives, and you have your keywords right there. So I'm going to close this panel. If I decide I want to add that piece of content to my class and assign it to my students, I'll just select it and I'll scroll down, I'll add it to my class, and then it'll pop right up there in my class. So once you've added content to your class, your students will be able to see that content. And if you want to launch it in WebXR from your computer screen, you just click on that blue launch button that's right here underneath each of the modules, and it's going to load that module in a new tab. So I just clicked on launch for this module called inhibitors. This is actually a chemistry module. But when it loads, the first thing you're going to see is an instructions panel. So like Glenn was saying earlier, all of these modules are interactive. So you'll be able to use your keyboard and either your mouse or your trackpad to navigate in a virtual environment. So you'd be able to look all around you 360 degrees, to manipulate objects, to move within the environment, just like you would in a video game. So this instructions panel just kind of teaches students how to use their keyboard and mouse to navigate before they actually go into their chemistry lab or their physics lab. And there's also a tutorial that they can take that allows them to practice those navigation skills before they actually go into their content. So I'm going to continue to my main activity menu. This was the module inhibitors that I launched here. So like Glenn was saying, all of our modules start with learning objectives, and then they have at least one introduction to the core concept. This particular one that I opened has actually 2 of those sections. These are the 2 middle sections. And then they all have a built-in assessment. So I'm going to click on one of these sections and just show you kind of what it looks like in there. Now, for everything that you do in these modules, it's going to give you words on the screen, and then it's also going to read those words to the student. So they'll be able to see the words, and then they'll be able to hear it as well. So it's telling me to navigate to the highlighted area. So I'm going to use my keyboard. So using my keyboard, I can look around and I can move forward. So I'm going to move to the highlighted area. So now here I'm at my station, and it's talking to me about inhibitors and how they can be used to help prevent food spoilage. So I'm going to just kind of click this and show you this particular activity. So there's a bottle of citric acid. I'm going to pour some in this Petri dish right here. Okay, now I'm going to cut this apple in half. So it kind of guides me through the process. I'm going to put half of that apple in this citric acid. And then I'm going to put, leave half of the apple just exposed to the air. And then I'm going to wait. It says I'm going to wait for 2 hours. So luckily we're doing this lab virtually, so we can speed up time here. So 2 hours is going by, and you can see that the piece of apple that was treated with citric acid remains kind of preserved, and then the other one has browned over time. So then as you continue on, it talks about what an inhibitor is and how it inhibits the rates of chemical reactions. And then of course, at the end, you have an assessment piece to that. So I'm going to go back into the platform here. So that was my content section. This section on my VR lab, this allows me to connect with VR headsets. So if I have a VR headset and I have my Veative content in the headsets, I can have my students wearing the headsets, and then I can be online on my device, on my platform here. I can be at my desktop computer or my iPad or whatever device I have online. And then I can actually play pieces of content directly inside my students' VR headsets. And I can monitor in real time what each student is seeing inside their headset. So if I want to select a piece of content, say I want them to see this one convection, I can play that content, pause, stop. I can get additional info here where I have my overview and my learning objectives again. And I can even create different groups of students. So I can create groups based on my students' learning needs. You know, if I have a group of students who I want to review certain material, and then I have another group of students who I want to move on to something new, I can place them into different groups and multicast different pieces of VR content to those different groups of students at the same time. And then one more piece here is the report section. There's a wide variety of different types of reports that teachers can access to see how their students are progressing through all of these different modules. So everything that the students do inside of the content is tracked. And then the teachers can see how the students are performing right here with the reports. So I can look at a report by module. So if I assign a certain lab module to my entire class and I want to see how all students in my class performed on that one module, I would look at this type of report. I can see my entire class overview, and I can drill down to an individual student as well. So I'm going to look at a module report here on changes between kinetic and potential energy. So I'm going to view that module and just show you what some of these reports look like. So I have 4 students in my class right now, but I can see which students have completed that lab and which students haven't. And then of the students that have completed it, I can see when they did it. There were 5 different assessment questions in this particular one. So I can see if they got each of those questions correct or incorrect. I can see their score and their percentage. And then the source will tell me if they completed it in WebXR on the computer, or if they completed it in VR from a headset, because the same content is available in both formats. On my class report, I can see kind of an overall snapshot of how my class is performing. So kind of their overall average here. Activity will tell me what they've been up to in the last week. So how many modules have they progressed through in the last 7 days? And I can see my most challenging modules also. So of the pieces of content that my students have completed, what modules may they have been struggling with? And then if I want to drill down to an individual student score report, I can do that as well. So here's one of my students, Marie. I can see all of the pieces of content she's completed, how many times she's taken those pieces of content, when she did them, her latest score, and then her average score. So for example, changes between kinetic and potential energy, she actually completed that module twice. So her last score was 80%, but if I click on that, I can again see that itemized report. The first time she had 60%, the second time she had 80%. So her last score was 80%, but I can also see her average for both of those attempts was 70. So a lot of data here you can access. And then her content proficiency. So of the pieces of content I've assigned to her, one she's mastered, and it'll tell me the details over here on the right. So that was a module called Gravity. She earned 100% on that. One she's learning, one she was struggling with, and then there were 5 items that I assigned to her that she hasn't completed yet. And also a question attempts. So was she answering the questions correctly on her first attempt, or on her second attempt, or on her third attempt? So I can look at that for all of the modules she's completed, or for one particular module. So quite a bit of data here. We also, have support worked into every page. So there's a little need help icon here on the bottom right-hand corner. So if you're stuck on anything, you can get help, you can get support articles. And we also have built-in professional development courses as well. So I hope that gives you an idea of the Veative platform, a little bit of it. Glenn, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
No problem. I think I'll try my camera. There you go. I'm back. I was lost there for a minute. I tried to answer a bunch of questions. There was a question, Mary, that you might be able to help. Leanne had asked about the volume of background music in the modules. All right. Can you control the volume of any of that?
As of right now, no, it's at one particular volume, but that is a feature that we'll be hopefully adding in the near future.
Okay, good. So again, please feel free to ask any outstanding questions you have. I just got a bit of a wrap up to do. And then again, we're really hoping that if there's any questions you have. So let me start by saying that we have Veative Canada is offering free access to the platform from now until the beginning of school in the fall. And we're doing that because there's a lot of schools we're working with that are trying to, do some learning loss recovery over the summer. So they're offering students access to the platform. and be able to either use it in a self-study environment or as part of summer school. So by all means, if it is something you want to participate in or you're interested in hearing more, then reach out to MJ. I'm going to show you her contact information or your rep at Diversified, and we will be happy to make those arrangements and to make it happen. But in summary, I just wanted to say, listen, what I really liked about the platform is, you know, one is it is available from VR with a headset, which is, you know, going to be the future of education. We're going to do a lot of VR, AR content. It's going to be there. This allows you to kind of bridge the both worlds, though, where you can use it broadly to everybody. The content's very relevant to your curriculum. I did have somebody ask me about provincially aligned curriculum. So right now it's aligned to the Ontario. We've done the Ontario alignment, but for us to realign it is quite simple. Once we just go get the science and math curriculum for Manitoba or for Quebec or for Alberta, and we just shuffle the deck, if you will. The content doesn't change. It may be I'm teaching this concept in grade 6 in Alberta and grade 7 in Ontario, and that really is how we have to align it. So within a week, or sorry, 10 days to 2 weeks, we can have it set up and aligned for a particular curriculum. So there's no new hardware to buy. You can be up and running in no time. The learning curve is quite short. Typically, we see teachers be able to pick this up with one 30-minute kind of online training session we do for them. And then obviously we fill in and answer questions after the fact. Again, it can be aligned to the curriculum. It works in any learning environment, which we've all experienced over the last year. From we're in class, we're out of class, we're partly in class, students are on their own, synchronous, they say. It works in all of those environments. It's very affordable. And it really is about enhancing lesson plans. As I said earlier, it's not about replacing lesson plans. It's about enhancing what is there and hopefully engaging students in a more effective way than some of the other methods that are out there. And then obviously what you're looking for is improved learning outcomes. So that's really all there is to say about Veative. We do have a couple of other products that are available. One is ELL. So it does require the headset, but we have well over 100 conversations that you can have. And the content is quite an interesting concept where you witness a conversation, then you take the place of one of those individuals in the conversation. And it could be checking into a hotel, getting on an airplane. So it's, conversation, real life conversations. And the headset itself has voice recognition. So it will be able to tell a student if they are, their quality of language is good enough to be acceptable and where they need improvement. So again, might be for a different day, but something else that I think gives you the scope of what virtual reality is going to mean in terms of education going forward. And that's it for the formal part of the presentation. More than happy to answer any questions. I know that Leanne is up and running, Mary, so maybe if you can hang around for, I don't know what your time's like, if you can hang around. She's got a few questions. She's having a couple challenges getting going. Are you available for the next little bit?
Sure, yeah.
So Leanne, maybe what we'll do is when we're done here, I'll send you a link to a Teams meeting, and you, I, and Mary and MJ can jump on the line. Okay, good, thank you. I think I have another question.
And we just have a question there about how to access the summer offer.
Sure.
This is Mary Jane.
Yeah.
So that information there is on the screen with my email address. Send me an email and we'll arrange to set that up.
Yeah, it doesn't take long. So we're more than happy to, if you want us to demonstrate it to teachers that will be using it, whatever, whether it's principals, summer school, happy to do all of those things. So just reach out to MJ and we'll coordinate kind of the response, the appropriate response.
And I don't think you mentioned this, but if they go to the Veative website, if they go into COVID-19, there are some free resources where they could try a couple of modules. just to see kind of how they work. Because sometimes it's great that we're showing it to them in a webinar, but sometimes it's nice if they can go in and try those modules themselves, a couple.
Yeah, so we could share the slide deck with everybody that attended. And on the slide that you're looking at is the URL for the 7-day trial. So you can go in and do that. We literally have opened the platform to schools for starting right away till the school starts again for Canadian schools. So again, if you want to really dive in, that might be a better approach. And for us to get you up and running, it isn't a long process. So I know it's kind of crazy in education, and getting anybody's attention right now is very difficult, but we're happy to help you and support you any way we can.
And you see the question from Nick there about the privacy?
I did. And it was a good question, and one I thought might come up earlier. So yes, we have worked with a number of boards across the country and provided them the documentation that talks about privacy. Obviously, it's a concern with any digital content, and we certainly are qualified to be utilized in schools. So happy to answer that question, Nicholas, in writing, or meet with the appropriate people on the board to give them what they need to be satisfied.
And Nick, if you just want an idea of what our privacy policy is about, if you just go to the website learn.veative.com and scroll down to the bottom, there's a link that says privacy policy that'll give you more information.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else, MJ, you could think of?
Not right now.
Okay. Well, folks, thank you very much for your time on behalf of Diversified and Veative. It is appreciated. And again, we'd love to help you guys and your students with their learning loss throughout the summer. So feel free to take full advantage of us on that offer. I greatly appreciate engaging with any of you. And with that said, MJ, Mary, and Leanne, I will send you guys out a meeting invitation, toot sweet, and we'll get on and fix your problems. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.